I would never have admitted to being afraid of the dark. Often, I found myself keeping the truth from my own mind. I tried so hard to deny my fear because there was no way I was ever going to admit what happened all those years ago. I took one step down the basement stairs, embracing my memories for the first time since it happened. As I heard the wooden step creak, I remembered my 9th birthday. On October 28th, 2012, it seemed as though every kid in the neighborhood showed up to my Halloween-themed birthday party. Everyone loved coming to my house because my mom threw amazing parties and took us places all the time. However, out of all my friends at that age, I was closest to Blake. We played together every single day unless one of us was grounded, and on that day he was the only one to stay for a sleepover. We hadn't talked since. I descended one step, hesitating so much to reach the bottom that I was putting both feet on each step and then pausing to reflect. I recalled Blake asking if we could play a new game he'd heard of at school. He described what he called the skeleton game, in which each player goes into a dark basement together at midnight. In order, from oldest to youngest, everyone took turns playing. He informed me that everyone always chickened out halfway. Both of my parents were sound asleep. Blake was older than me, and there were only 2 of us, so he went first. The instructions for the game were simple. The player whose turn it was laid on the ground and avoided all bodily movements until they gave up. Blake did this as we both nervously giggled. "This is so dumb," I remember saying. The next step was for him to completely forget about his body by focusing his mind on picturing bugs and imagining the sounds they make. He wanted me to do the same. This would supposedly send him into a state of sleep paralysis, although instead of calling it that, he just described what sleep paralysis was. I took one more step downward. The hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I felt a chill across my entire body, giving me goosebumps. I felt as though this process of remembering was putting me in a trance. I went deeper into my mind, remembering how Blake sat there for several minutes, both of us in deep silence before he laughed and quietly spoke. "This is stupid. This isn't gonna work." I chuckled. Nevertheless, he continued to play the game. He was not the quitting type, and he was determined for this to work. He never did explain why the game was called the skeleton game. All I knew at this point was that it was supposed to scare you into quitting because you would start feeling like bugs were crawling all over your skin and under it. After about 10 minutes of waiting, I began to feel extremely paranoid about what might be in that dark basement with us. Despite my uneasy gut feeling, I grew tired. That was the latest I had stayed up in a long time, and the combination of silence and darkness made me sleepy. My eyes and head felt heavy, so I carefully sat my head down on the ground and drifted to sleep. As I was losing consciousness, I noticed that Blake seemed to be sleeping as well, as his breathing was extremely deep, loud, and steady. Thinking about what happened next made me snap out of my trance and nearly have a panic attack. My breathing accelerated so much that my hands went numb and my jaw and lips felt tight, despite experiencing the urge to sprint up the stairs. I sprinted down the steps, straight into the abyss Blake and I had entered 9 years prior. Even though I'd lived in the same house the entire time, I hadn't gone down there since that horrible day. Now at the bottom of the stairs, I walked to where Blake and I had slept. The last of those memories gushed into the front of my brain with such force I thought my skull was going to break. When I woke up a few hours later, I could never have been prepared for what I saw. I had expected Blake to be just fine as he was a few hours ago. Instead, I was woken up by his blood-curdling screams. He yelled in pure agony and terror. I watched as he flailed his arms in all directions helplessly. I ran to the light switch and turned it on to find my dear friend covered in all sorts of bugs and insects. At the present moment, I closed my eyes and attempted to think about something else. I did not want to remember how they ate Blake in front of me. I did not want to remember how I didn't even try to wake him up or get the bugs off of him. I simply screamed and ran upstairs to get my parents. I did not want to remember how he screeched as his life slipped away before my parents could do anything to help. I did not want to remember seeing his skeleton on the floor of my basement. And yet, I did. When I opened my eyes, I saw him standing in front of me. I opened my mouth to scream in horror, but I could not. As my eyes filled with tears, I heard the bug-infested skeleton of my friend ask me, "Aren't you going to finish the game?"